What if the very thing you thought would carry you to safety suddenly disappeared? What if the boat you trusted sank and you thought it was over, but God wasn't finished yet? This story will show you that when what you're holding onto fails, God's purpose still stands. There was a man named Elijah. He lived in a little house by the shore, simple but cozy, just like him. He wasn't one for fancy clothes or big parties. All he really needed was his family, a warm meal after a day's work, and a good night's sleep. He was a fisherman in a small coastal village. He wasn't just a fisherman by trade. It was his identity, his security, his whole life. The ocean was his playground. Since he was knee-high to a grasshopper, he knew every rock, pool, and cove better than the back of his own hand. His boat, the ocean's grace, was an extension of himself, strong, steady, and reliable. It was more than just a vessel. It was his pride, his livelihood, and the key to his simple happiness. He wasn't the flashiest or the wealthiest man in town, but he was respected. The other villagers knew if they put their trust in Elijah for a ride on the sea, they'd reach their destination safe and sound. One morning, as the sun stretched lazy fingers across the horizon, Elijah woke up feeling especially grateful. His nets had been full the evening before, and there was enough fish to feed his family for weeks. As he prepped for another day at sea, his son, a young lad named Samuel, approached him, his eyes shining with admiration. "Papa, can I come with you today? I want to learn." Elijah looked at his boy, his heart swelling with pride. Samuel was a quick learner and a hard worker, just like his father. But he was also too young for the dangers of the sea. Still, the thought of passing down his skills to his son tugged at his heartstrings. "All right, son," he said with a smile. "But you must promise to listen closely and stay close to me. The sea is beautiful, but she can turn nasty in the blink of an eye." Samuel beamed and ran to get his own small net. Together, father and son headed out to sea. They weren't going too far. It was just a short fishing trip so Samuel could learn the ropes. The sky was painted in soft hues of blue, the waves danced merrily, and the air hummed with the promise of a good day's catch. It was perfect weather, the kind that made Elijah feel truly alive. As the hours passed, Elijah patiently taught Samuel about reading the tides, casting the nets, and caring for their catch. They worked side by side, two figures on a vast expanse of water, united in their love for the sea and each other. Just as the sun began its slow descent, signaling it was time to return home, the sky took a dramatic turn. Dark clouds rolled in, the wind picked up, and the playful waves transformed into towering monsters. In a matter of moments, what had been a tranquil day turned into a raging storm. Fear tightened its grip on Samuel's heart. The sudden shift in the weather was terrifying. The once gentle sea was now a furious beast, tossing their small boat like a leaf in a whirlwind. Rain lashed against them, blurring Samuel's vision. Lightning cracked, momentarily illuminating the wild, angry face of the ocean. Thunder roared, shaking the very foundations of their boat. "Papa," Samuel cried, clinging to his father, "I'm scared." Elijah, though shaken himself, gathered his courage and enveloped his son in a tight embrace. "Don't worry, son," he said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "I won't let anything happen to you." Struggling against the relentless waves, Elijah steered the boat towards the shore. Each wave that crashed over them threatened to swallow their dreams, their hopes, their lives. As the storm intensified, the ocean's grace began to crack. A deep gash appeared on its side, and water started seeping in. "We have to leave the boat," Elijah shouted over the wind, realizing there was no repairing the damage. "Quick, hold on to these lifebuoys. I'll make sure you reach the shore." He secured the lifebuoys around Samuel and pushed him away from the sinking vessel. "Swim to that rock, Samuel, and wait for me there. I'll be right behind you." With a final, desperate surge of strength, Elijah propelled himself away from the sinking ocean's grace. The wind snatched his words away, leaving only the pounding rain and the haunting cries of the sea. Now alone in the raging tempest, Elijah watched Samuel disappear from sight, hoping his son had reached the safety of the rock. Then he turned back to the struggling boat. But as he did, a colossal wave struck, tearing the life buoy from his grasp and sending him tumbling into the churning waters. The last thing he saw was the wild, uncaring face of the ocean before it all went black. Samuel huddled on the rock, his body shaking uncontrollably. The wind tore at his clothes, trying to drag him away from his hiding place. Fear not at him. Where was his father? Had he made it? Was he coming? Doubts and fears swirled in his mind, threatening to pull him under. Then he saw a flash of red in the churning waters. With renewed determination, Samuel forced himself to his feet and waved his arms frantically, calling out for help. His voice, hoarse from fear and exhaustion, was almost lost in the storm's fury. But then he saw it again, a red cap bobbing amidst the waves. And with a surge of adrenaline, he plunged into the raging sea. Hours passed. Samuel's body grew weak. The endless crashing of the waves became a haunting lullaby. Hope flickered, then dimmed, leaving him in the suffocating grip of despair. He struggled to keep his eyes open, the image of his father's smiling face fading into the stormy darkness. Just as Samuel's consciousness began to slip away, he felt a hand grab his shoulder, pulling him back from the brink. He opened his eyes to see a woman kneeling beside him, her face etched with concern. "You need help," she said, her voice barely audible above the wind. "Come with me. There are others here." She helped him to his feet and led him deeper into the rocky terrain. Emerging from the protective embrace of the rocks, Samuel gasped. There, huddled together on the beach, were several people, all soaked, shivering, and scared, just like him. A man with a comforting smile stepped forward. "Are you all right?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over Samuel's battered form. Samuel shook his head, unable to speak, unable to explain the terror he had endured. "Then come closer to the fire," the man said. "Warm yourself and tell us what happened. We'll help." As Samuel shared his tale of loss and fear, a sense of community washed over him. These strangers, with their shared experience of loss and their quiet strength in the face of adversity, became his anchors. Together they waited, hoping against hope that Elijah would appear, that somehow the storm had been kind to him. They waited for hours, but the only solace they found was in the flickering flames of their makeshift fire. The storm eventually subsided, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a heavy silence. The sun peeked timidly through the clouds, casting an eerie glow on the ravaged landscape. The sea, now calm and serene, mocked their sorrow with its deceptive tranquility. It was then that the grim reality of their situation sank in. The storm had taken much, perhaps even everything. Elijah, however, remained missing. Samuel, his spirit broken, sank to his knees, burying his face in his hands. A sob escaped his lips, echoing the profound loss he felt. Days turned into weeks, each day a torment for Samuel and the other survivors. Their hope dwindled with each passing hour, replaced by a numbing despair. The initial shock had worn off, leaving behind raw grief and the stark reality of their situation. Samuel, unable to bear the pain in his small cottage, decided to escape the suffocating memories by venturing into the sea. The vast expanse of the ocean mirrored his own emptiness. Maybe in the depths of the sea lay the answers he so desperately sought. As he stood at the shore, his eyes fixed on the horizon, a glint of gold caught his attention. On a nearby island, nestled between the sea and the sky, was a patch of shimmering sand. Intrigued, Samuel set off to explore. The island, though small, was a sanctuary of sorts. It boasted fruit trees laden with ripe, juicy fruits, freshwater springs, and most remarkably, sturdy huts crafted from natural materials. Relief washed over Samuel. Food and water, they were not far to seek. But who had built these structures? And more importantly, where were the builders? Samuel's curiosity got the better of him. He ventured further into the island's interior, eager to unravel its secrets. Suddenly, he saw them, human figures moving in the distance. With cautious steps, Samuel emerged from his hiding spot and called out to them. The figures turned, revealing themselves to be men and women who looked weathered by the elements and hardship, yet resolute and resourceful. They welcomed Samuel, their faces etched with kindness despite their own struggles. "We found this island weeks ago," one of the men explained, his voice gruff but gentle. "Shipwrecked like us. We managed to survive and build a shelter." Samuel learned that these people had been marooned on the island for over a month, enduring the same hardships he had faced. Yet they had not succumbed to despair. Instead, they had banded together, sharing their resources and supporting each other. In the days that followed, Samuel immersed himself in helping the islanders with their tasks. He mended a damaged fishing net, assisted in gathering fruits, and helped in building a larger, sturdier shelter. His grief over his father receded somewhat, replaced by a sense of purpose and camaraderie. Together, they constructed a large signal fire, its smoke billowing towards the sky, a silent plea for help to any passing ship. Days turned into weeks, and hope flickered anew. The relentless optimism of the islanders rubbed off on Samuel, infusing him with strength. Then one morning, as the sun rose in hues of gold and crimson, a change in the sky caught their attention. A thin wisp of smoke snaked its way into the vast expanse, a beacon against the backdrop of the endless blue. "A ship," someone cried out, their voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and elation. They rushed to the highest point on the island and waved their arms frantically, their voices joining in a chorus of joy. The sight of the smoke grew clearer with each passing moment, transforming into the distinct outline of a vessel on the horizon. As the ship drew nearer, their hopes soared. Samuel, tears brimming in his eyes, looked towards the sea, his heart pounding in his chest. The islanders, with years of hardship etched on their faces, broke into cheers, their laughter carried by the wind, reaching the ears of the sailors on the ship. The captain, a grizzled man with eyes that had seen many storms, steered the ship closer to the island. He had spotted the smoke, knowing it meant there were people in need of help. As the ship docked on the sandy shore, the islanders, including Samuel, swarmed onto the deck, their faces a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Thank you," Samuel whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Thank you for saving us." The captain, his face softening, placed a hand on Samuel's shoulder. "You are safe now," he said, his voice gruff with kindness. "Let's get you off this island." As they left the island, the ocean's grace rested peacefully on the water, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The boat that had been lost to the storm had become a symbol of their collective struggle and ultimate triumph over adversity. Elijah's boat sank, but his story didn't. As they arrived in the village, news of their rescue spread like wildfire. The townspeople, moved by their ordeal, offered them shelter and provisions. Samuel, carrying the weight of his father's absence, visited the spot where their boat had sunk. Days turned into weeks, and a sense of normalcy returned to the village. The scars of the storm, however, ran deep. Many had lost loved ones, homes, and livelihoods. Samuel, haunted by the loss of his father, found solace in helping others rebuild. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Samuel sat by the shore, his gaze fixed on the rippling waves. It was during those quiet moments that the gravity of his loss pressed down on him. He had lost his father, his guide, his protector, the anchor that had held him steady in life's storms. A deep, aching void seemed to have taken root in his heart. Just then, a hand touched his shoulder, and he turned to see an elderly man with eyes that twinkled with wisdom. It was one of the survivors from the island, a man who had seen his fair share of life's ups and downs. "I understand your pain," the man began, his voice a low rumble that echoed the sadness in Samuel's heart. "I've lost my share of loved ones to the sea." Samuel nodded, unable to speak, the lump in his throat catching his words. "Your father," the man continued, "was a good man. He was respected. He was a pillar of this community. His loss is a wound that will take time to heal." Samuel looked at the man, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "But," the man went on, sensing Samuel's pain, "you must remember that your father was a fisherman. The sea was his lifeblood. It's possible he found peace in its depths, that he's at rest somewhere beneath the waves." Samuel considered these words, letting them wash over him like the gentle rhythm of the sea. The idea of his father at peace in the vast expanse of the ocean brought a semblance of calm to his troubled soul. "Do you believe that?" Samuel asked softly, his voice breaking the silence of the evening. "I do," the man replied, his gaze unwavering. "The sea may have taken him, but it hasn't extinguished the light he brought to our lives. He lives on in the memories he created, in the lives he touched." These words struck a chord within Samuel, resonating with the love and respect his father had received from the villagers. Elijah hadn't just been a fisherman. He had been a source of strength, kindness, and unwavering support for those around him. Elijah realized that while the physical presence of his father was indeed lost to the sea, his legacy lived on in the hearts of those he had known. When we choose to be kind and generous, it changes not only the recipient, but also the giver. It's like throwing a pebble into a pond. You never know how far the ripples will go. So I encourage you to be like those people on the beach. Be kind, be generous, and be a blessing to others. You never know who you might help or how far the ripples of your kindness might go. I hope this story has inspired you to do something nice for someone today. And if it has, please share your story with us in the comments below. Who knows, you might just inspire someone else to do the same. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.